They said she was barren. Worthless. A genetic dead end that brought shame to the Vance bloodline. So her family sold her to the Alpha King for the price of their pack's survival. But 3 days after Gabriel Bravemoon marked her neck and claimed her body, Sarah felt the impossible. A tiny, perfect heartbeat pulsing beneath her ribs. The doctors were wrong. Her family was wrong. He was never broken. She was only waiting for him. The mist rolled like ghostly fingers through the forest clearing at the border of Crescent Falls territory as Sarah Vance stepped away from her family for what she already knew would be the last time. Her worn suitcase bumped against her leg, the leather handle slick with nervous sweat despite the cool night air. She didn't look back. She didn't want to see her mother's relieved expression or her father's eager anticipation of the payment about to change hands. The ceremonial torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across the ancient trees that bordered the clearing. Wolves watched from the darkness, eyes gleaming amber and silver in the moonlight, their massive forms barely visible among the twisted roots and moss-covered stones. They weren't from her pack. These were outsiders, warriors, the elite guards of someone far more powerful than anyone Sarah had ever known. The damp earth squelched beneath her boots as she approached the gathering at the center of the clearing, an expensive display of power that didn't belong in Crescent Falls, a small pack territory where everyone knew everyone's business and secrets were currency. But this transaction wasn't meant to be secret. It was meant to be witnessed, remembered. A reminder of what happened to broken Omegas who couldn't fulfill their biological purpose. Her father, Pack Alpha Marcus Vance, stood with head elder Silas Greymane and another elder she recognized but whose name she'd never bothered to learn. They held a contract sealed with dark red wax bearing the ancient Bravemoon seal, a crescent moon pierced by 3 claws. Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. He hadn't looked at her properly in years, not since the doctors declared her infertile at 19. 5 years of being invisible in her own home, 5 years of being the family's greatest shame. And across from them stood Alpha King Gabriel Bravemoon. Sarah had heard stories about him her entire life. The most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, ruler of lands that stretched from the mountain ranges to the frozen coast. They said he was ancient, that he'd lived for centuries, that his bloodline traced back to the first wolves blessed by the moon goddess herself. They said he was ruthless in battle and merciless to those who betrayed him. They said he'd been searching for something for decades, though no one knew what. Now she understood. He'd been searching for her. Gabriel wasn't what she'd expected. He wasn't the hulking, scarred beast of the rumors. He was tall and powerfully built, yes, but there was something almost elegant about him. His long dark hair was swept back from his face, silver threads woven through it like moonlight on black water. His pale skin seemed to glow in the torchlight, and his eyes, those unervingly intense amber eyes, were fixed on her with a focus that made her skin prickle with something between fear and recognition. He wore a long cloak of deep burgundy over dark leathers, and an ancient ring bearing his family's seal gleamed on his right hand. He wasn't trying to look intimidating. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. Even the elder wolves of her pack seemed smaller in his shadow. Sarah clutched her suitcase tighter, her white dress, the only decent thing she owned, hastily pressed for this occasion, already dampened by mist at the hem. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like prey standing before a predator. But when Gabriel's gaze met hers, she didn't see hunger. She saw something far more unnerving: knowledge. As if he could see straight through her skin to the dormant power she'd never known she carried. Elder Silas cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the clearing with practiced ceremony. Sarah Vance, by pack law and family right, you are hereby released from Crescent Falls territory and bonded in servitude to Alpha King Gabriel Bravemoon of the Northern Mountain Packs. May the moon goddess guide your path and grant you purpose in your new life. Servitude. Not marriage. Not mate bond. Not even a proper arranged union. Servitude. As if she were property being transferred from one owner to another. Sarah's mother stood a few paces behind her father, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief in a performance of maternal grief that fooled no one. Her younger sister, Lily, the perfect, fertile Omega who would make an advantageous match and bring honor to the family name, wasn't even here. She'd been spared the humiliation of witnessing her defective sister's departure. Marcus accepted the sealed envelope from Gabriel's hand, the one containing whatever price he'd negotiated for his disappointing daughter. He nodded once, sharply, as if concluding a business deal for livestock. "She's yours, Alpha King. May she serve you better than she served her birth pack." The words stung more than Sarah expected, though they shouldn't have. She'd known for years that her father viewed her as nothing more than a failed investment. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been disgust, though not directed at Sarah. He took a single step forward, his boots silent on the damp ground despite his size, and extended his hand toward her. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and resonant, carrying an undercurrent of power that made the wolves in the shadows whine softly in submission. "Miss Vance," he said, his tone surprisingly gentle, almost soothing despite the formality of the situation. "Are you ready?" Sarah stared at that outstretched hand. Strong, scarred, adorned with silver rings that caught the moonlight. Behind Gabriel she could see more wolves emerging from the tree line. His pack, his warriors, his people. Dozens of them, all watching her with curious golden eyes. Some were in wolf form, massive beasts that dwarfed the wolves of Crescent Falls. Others stood in human form, dressed in the dark leathers and furs of the Northern Territories. She looked back at her family. Her mother's fake tears had already stopped. Her father was counting the contents of the envelope, his face showing the first genuine pleasure she'd seen from him in years. The pack elders were already turning away, their duty completed, eager to return to the warmth of the pack house and discuss the generous payment that would fund Crescent Falls through the harsh winter. None of them cared where she was going or what would happen to her. They never had. Sarah turned back to Gabriel, meeting those amber eyes that seemed to see everything she'd tried so hard to hide. The loneliness, the pain, the desperate hope that maybe, somewhere, there was a place she belonged. "Do I have a choice?" she asked, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded despite the trembling in her hands. For a moment, something shifted in Gabriel's expression. Not pity, she'd seen enough pity to recognize it, but something closer to understanding. "Not anymore," he answered honestly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But I assure you, Sarah, you are safer with me than you ever were here." Safe. She tested the word, found it strange on her tongue. She'd never felt safe in Crescent Falls. Not with parents who looked at her like she was a burden. Not with pack members who whispered that her barren womb made her worthless. Not with the constant medical examinations and invasive tests, the humiliating questions from fertility specialists, the crushing weight of everyone's disappointment pressing down on her day after day, year after year. A cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of pine and snow from the mountains to the north. Sarah shivered in her thin dress, suddenly aware of how inadequate her clothing was for wherever Gabriel was taking her. "If you'll take my hand," Gabriel said, still patient, still waiting. Sarah glanced one last time at the life she was leaving behind. The small territory she'd known her entire life. The pack that had never wanted her. The family that had sold her the moment someone made an offer. There was nothing here worth staying for. Nothing here had ever been hers. She reached out and placed her hand in Gabriel's. The moment their skin touched, the world tilted. A shock of sensation shot through her, not painful but overwhelming. Heat and electricity and recognition, as if every cell in her body had suddenly woken from a deep sleep and was screaming, "Yes, him, finally, this is what we've been waiting for." Sarah gasped, her eyes widening, and she saw her own shock reflected in Gabriel's face. His fingers tightened around hers, gentle but firm, as if anchoring her to the earth before she could float away. "I know," he murmured so quietly she almost missed it. "I feel it too." Behind them someone, probably Elder Silas, cleared their throat impatiently. The ceremony was over. The transaction complete. Time for the Alpha King to leave with his purchase and let Crescent Falls return to normal. Gabriel didn't let go of her hand as he guided her toward the edge of the clearing where a massive vehicle waited. Something between an SUV and an armored transport, built for the rough mountain terrain. Its dark exterior gleamed in the moonlight, and through the windows, Sarah could see soft leather seats and warm interior lighting that promised comfort she'd only dreamed of. The wolves that had been watching from the shadows fell into formation around them, some shifting fluidly from human to wolf form mid-stride. They moved with military precision, creating a protective perimeter as Gabriel opened the passenger door for her. Sarah climbed inside, the warmth enveloping her immediately. The seats were buttersoft leather, heated against the cold. The interior smelled of pine and sandalwood and something wild she couldn't identify. Wolf, probably, mixed with the mountain air that must cling to Gabriel's pack. It was nothing like the shabby vehicle her father drove, with its torn seats and perpetual smell of motor oil and disappointment. Gabriel settled into the driver's seat beside her, his movements fluid and controlled. The door shut with a solid, expensive sound, cutting off the chill night air and the judgmental stares of her former pack. Through the window, Sarah watched as her father turned away, already walking back toward the pack house with Elder Silas, discussing how to spend their new wealth. Her mother had disappeared entirely. "They won't look for you," Gabriel said quietly, following her gaze. "They signed the contract. You belong to the Brave Moon Pack now, under my protection and authority. Pack law is absolute. They have no claim on you anymore." Sarah didn't know if that should make her feel relieved or terrified. Probably both. The engine purred to life, quiet, powerful, nothing like the sputtering vehicles she was used to. Through the windshield she could see the wolves taking position around them, some running ahead to scout the path, others falling behind to guard their rear. This wasn't just transportation. This was a military convoy protecting something valuable. Protecting her. The thought made her dizzy. As they pulled away from the clearing, Sarah couldn't help but glance back one last time. The torches were already being extinguished. The elders were gone. The clearing would be empty within minutes, as if the transaction had never happened. As if Sarah Vance had never existed. Good, she thought with surprising fierceness. Let them forget me. Let them think I was worthless. She didn't know where that thought came from. She'd never been fierce or confident in her life, but it felt right somehow, like a truth buried deep that was finally beginning to surface. Before we continue Sarah's journey from worthless Omega to powerful true Omega, I need to know, are you part of the pack? If you're howling along with this story, show your loyalty by hitting that like button and subscribing to join our territory. And drop a comment below letting me know where in the world you're watching from. Let's see how far our pack reaches. Now let's return to Sarah's transformation. The road climbed higher, winding through ancient forests that pressed close like living walls. Sarah watched the trees blur past, their gnarled branches reaching toward the vehicle as if trying to pull her back. But there was no going back. The contract was signed. She belonged to Gabriel Bravemoon now. Every few minutes she caught glimpses of movement in the trees. Massive wolves keeping pace with the vehicle, their eyes reflecting gold and silver in the darkness. His guards. Protectors of her. The thought made no sense. They told you that you were infertile. Gabriel's voice broke the silence. It wasn't a question, but Sarah nodded anyway. Her throat felt tight with shame. Since I was 19. Multiple specialists. They were wrong, Gabriel interrupted. About many things. She searched his face for mockery or pity. Found neither. Only certainty, as if he knew truths about her body that a dozen doctors had missed. Questions burned in her throat, but exhaustion had stolen her voice. Gabriel seemed content to let her process in silence, occasionally glancing at her with those knowing amber eyes. His patience unsettled her more than anger would have. The landscape grew wilder as they climbed. Domesticated forests gave way to something primordial. Trees older than memory twisted toward a sky full of stars Sarah had never seen so clearly. The air felt different here, sharper, heavy with power that made her wolf stir restlessly. Near midnight, Castle Bravemoon rose from the mountainside like it had grown there, carved from dark stone. Massive towers pierced the night sky. Torches burned in iron sconces along walls that had stood for centuries. Guards patrolled in both forms, humans and wolves the size of bears, alert for any threat. Sarah's breath caught. The weight of history pressed down on her. Gabriel helped her from the vehicle, and that electric shock ran through her again when their hands touched. He led her through stone corridors lit by flickering torchlight, past tapestries depicting wolves and battles under full moons. Servants bowed as they passed, their eyes curious but respectful. He stopped before a heavy wooden door, revealing a suite that stole her breath. Darkwood furniture. Rich fabrics in burgundy and forest green. A massive canopy bed. Windows overlooking mountain forests. A fireplace where flames danced, filling the room with warmth and pine scent. "These are your rooms," Gabriel said. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we will talk." Sarah turned to face him, suddenly afraid of being alone in this strange, beautiful place. "And Sarah," Gabriel paused at the door, his amber eyes intense in the firelight. You are not a servant here. You are under my protection. That means something in my kingdom. Before she could ask what that meant, he was gone, leaving her alone with questions that multiplied with every breath. Morning light flooded Sarah's chambers, warm and golden, so different from the dim rooms she'd known in Crescent Falls. A tray of food waited on the table by the window. Fresh bread, honey, fruit she'd only seen at market stalls she couldn't afford. She ate mechanically, her stomach tight with nerves. What did Gabriel want from her? What did talk really mean? A soft knock preceded a kindly older woman who introduced herself as Marta. Her eyes were warm, her smile genuine as she helped Sarah bathe and dress in clothes that actually fit, soft fabrics that moved like water against her skin, so unlike the shabby things she'd brought from home. The Alpha King has asked for you to join him in the Great Hall, Marta said, and there was no pity in her voice. Only respect. Gabriel waited below, dressed formally in the regalia of his position, dark ceremonial robes etched in silver, the brave moon seal gleaming at his throat. But his expression softened when he saw her. Walk with me, he said, extending his hand. He led her through the castle, showing her tapestries and carvings that told stories centuries old. The Brave Moon Pack was one of the oldest, he explained. His lineage traced back to the first wolves, the original shifters blessed by the moon goddess herself. On a balcony overlooking endless mountain forests, Gabriel stopped. For 20 years I've searched, he said quietly. The ancient texts spoke of true omegas, a bloodline nearly lost. They were destined mates of the strongest alphas, capable of bearing heirs with unprecedented power. But they were hunted, feared, stolen away until their bloodline was thought extinct. What does this have to do with me? Sarah interrupted, her voice barely steady. Gabriel turned to her and his gaze was fierce. Everything. Your scent called to me from territories away. Your essence is unmistakable to those who know what to look for. Sarah Vance, you are a true Omega. The doctors who declared you infertile didn't understand what they were seeing. Your Omega nature was dormant, suppressed by the wrong environment, the wrong pack. You needed the right alpha, Sarah whispered, beginning to understand. Your true mate, Gabriel corrected. Me. That evening, under the full moon, Gabriel claimed her before his assembled court. The ancient ritual unfolded like a dream. His bite marking her neck, their life forces binding, sacred vows spoken in a language older than memory. Sarah felt the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock, and everything inside her that had been dormant suddenly roared to life. Later, in Gabriel's chambers, the bond was consummated. It was intense, primal, and somehow tender. He treated her like she was precious, powerful, worthy. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt whole. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, in a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds, wrapped in sheets that cost more than everything she'd owned in Crescent Falls. For a disorienting moment she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The clearing, her father's eager face as he accepted payment, Gabriel's hand in hers, the overwhelming sensation when their skin touched. She sat up slowly, her body humming with an energy she'd never experienced before. Everything felt sharper, more alive. The morning light didn't just illuminate the room. She could see individual dust motes dancing in the beams, could count the threads in the curtains across the room. The scent of pine and mountain air filled her lungs, but underneath it she detected something else. Earth, stone, the lingering musk of wolves, and Gabriel's distinct scent, sandalwood, and something wild that made her heart race. Deep in her core, beneath her ribs where her heart beat steady and strong, there was something new. A warmth. A presence. A tiny flutter of life that shouldn't exist. Sarah pressed her hand to her stomach, her breath catching. But it was impossible. It had been less than 24 hours since Gabriel marked her, since he'd claimed her body in a way that had awakened something dormant inside her. The doctors had been clear. She was barren, infertile, a genetic dead end. This couldn't be happening. But the flutter persisted, insistent and undeniable. Gabriel was already awake, standing by the window with his back to her, dressed in dark clothes that emphasized his powerful frame. When she stirred, he turned, and those amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He knew. Somehow he already knew. You feel it, he said. Not a question. A statement of fact. Sarah's hand remained pressed to her stomach. Feel what? The beginning. Gabriel crossed the room with fluid grace, kneeling beside the bed so their eyes were level. He didn't touch her, but she felt his presence like heat radiating from a fire. Dr. Thorne will confirm it, but I can already sense the change in you. Within the hour, Dr. Thorne arrived, a weathered wolf with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen centuries of pack history. The examination was brief, almost perfunctory. His gnarled hands barely touched her before his weathered face broke into a rare smile. Alpha King, he said, straightening with visible satisfaction. Congratulations. She carries your heir. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the edge of the bed, her knuckles white. That's impossible. It's been less than 24 hours since the mating bond completed your awakening, Gabriel finished, his voice gentle but firm. He dismissed Dr. Thorne with a nod, waiting until they were alone before continuing. True omegas are different, Sarah. Your body was waiting for your mate's essence to trigger your full transformation. Now awakened, you are capable of conceiving immediately. Our child was meant to be. Sarah stared at him, her mind racing. True omega. Awakening. Mate. The words didn't make sense. She was broken, defective, worthless. Her family had made that clear for 5 years. And yet there was no denying the life growing inside her, impossible and undeniable. I want answers, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Now. Gabriel led her to his private study, a room lined floor to ceiling with ancient books and scrolls. He spread documents across a massive oak desk, yellowed parchment covered in elegant script, leather-bound journals with cracked spines, illustrations of wolves and symbols she didn't recognize. The history of her kind laid bare before her. True omegas, Gabriel explained, his fingers tracing text that looked centuries old, are rare. Perhaps one in every 100,000 wolves. Your fertility isn't like others. It's dormant until you meet your true mate. The mating bond awakens what was always inside you. Once awakened, your body doesn't follow normal biological timelines. You conceive quickly, carry quickly, birth powerful heirs who inherit both your dormant strength and your mate's power. He showed her account after account. True omegas throughout history and their impossible pregnancies. The powerful heirs they bore. The way they were hunted, destroyed, killed by alphas who feared their mate's power would eclipse their own. Your infertility diagnosis, Gabriel said quietly, was your dormant state being misread as dysfunction. Your pack didn't know what you were. Perhaps it's better they didn't. You would have been taken, used, or killed before I could find you. Sarah processed this, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. Everything she'd believed about herself was wrong. She wasn't broken. She was waiting. Why did you search for me? She asked. What do you want from me and this child? Gabriel's expression grew serious, the weight of centuries settling on his shoulders. I want what the prophecy foretold. A chance to unite the packs, to end centuries of territorial wars and political games. Our child, an heir born of the Brave Moon line and a true omega, will have the strength and legitimacy to accomplish what I cannot alone. But Sarah, he paused, meeting her eyes with unflinching honesty, I won't lie to you. Others will want to prevent this. The Council of Elders, rival alphas, rogues who profit from chaos. They will come for you and our child. The warmth in Sarah's core pulsed stronger, as if the tiny life inside her understood the danger it already faced. She looked at Gabriel, this ancient alpha who had searched for her, claimed her, awakened something she never knew existed. He should be terrified. Instead she felt something else entirely, the fierce, primal need to protect what was growing inside her no matter the cost. Sarah woke on her second morning in the Brave Moon's stronghold to find Gabriel already dressed, standing by the window with 2 steaming cups of tea. He turned when he heard her stir, and something in his expression, soft, almost vulnerable, made her chest tighten. This ancient, powerful alpha who could command armies with a word was looking at her like she was precious. I thought you might have questions, he said, offering her a cup. I have nowhere more important to be. Despite everything, the shock of her pregnancy, the revelation of what she truly was, the looming threats he'd warned about, Sarah found herself drawn to Gabriel in ways that transcended the mating bond. He answered every question patiently, never dismissing her concerns or making her feel foolish for not knowing things she'd never been taught. When she'd grown up being treated as worthless, having someone genuinely interested in her thoughts felt revolutionary. As my mate and a true Omega, Gabriel explained as they walked through the stronghold's corridors, you have political power now. Other wolves must show her respect. You have the right to speak in council, to make decisions, to lead alongside me. Sarah stopped walking. Pack members bowed their heads as they passed. Warriors, elders, wolves who'd lived for centuries, all showing deference to her. I don't know how to be what you need me to be. Gabriel turned to face her fully, his amber eyes intense. You already are. You survived years of abuse and neglect with your spirit intact. You have more strength than you know. The words settled over her like a balm on wounds she didn't realize still bled. They spent the day together, and genuine feelings developed beyond the supernatural pull of the mate bond. In his private garden as afternoon faded to twilight, Gabriel shared his history, the crushing weight of leadership, the profound loneliness of his position, how he'd waited decades for his true mate while watching other alphas settle for political matches that left them hollow. Sarah found herself sharing her own pain, growing up as the broken daughter, the endless medical tests and invasive examinations, the way her family had looked at her with disappointment and shame every single day. You are magnificent, Gabriel told her as stars began appearing overhead. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with surprising gentleness. Everything you endured made you who you are. The moon goddess chose well when she bound us. Sarah leaned into his touch, something fierce and protective rising in her chest. The tiny flutter of their child pulsed between them, a constant reminder of their shared future. That night when they came together, everything was different. Sarah initiated, her hands reaching for Gabriel with confidence she'd never possessed before. She claimed him as much as he claimed her, understanding for the first time the power she held, not just as a true Omega but as herself. Sarah. Their child pulsed stronger with each shared breath, each whispered word, each moment of connection. She was beginning to understand her worth. And she would protect this, all of it, with everything she had. Sarah woke on the third morning to find Gabriel already dressed in battle gear, dark leather armor reinforced with steel, weapons strapped to his body with practiced efficiency. The sight sent ice through her veins. Stay in the castle, he ordered, his voice harder than she'd ever heard it. My scouts detected movement in the forest. We may have visitors. She sat up, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. What kind of visitors? The kind who don't announce themselves. Gabriel crossed to her, pressing a brief, fierce kiss to her forehead. I'll handle this. Just stay. Alarms shattered the morning quiet. Howls echoed from the walls, not the organized calls of Gabriel's warriors, but wild, chaotic sounds that spoke of violence and blood. Through the window, Sarah could see wolves streaming from the forest, their forms twisted and wrong, rogues who'd abandoned pack law for chaos. The attack had already begun. Gabriel's expression turned lethal. Get to the safe room. Now. He was moving before she could respond, barking orders through a communication device as he ran. Sarah scrambled from the bed, pulling on clothes with shaking hands. Through the windows she could see the battle unfolding, Gabriel's forces engaging the attackers in brutal combat, teeth and claws flashing in the early light. But even as she watched, several rogues broke through the defensive line, their trajectory unmistakable. They were heading for the castle. Heading for her. The sound of shattering glass came from somewhere below. Screams. The clash of weapons. Sarah's wolf senses, sharper now since her awakening, picked up everything with horrible clarity. Blood. Smoke. The acrid scent of rogues who'd given themselves over to madness. She ran for the corridor but stopped dead when she heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Heavy. Fast. Multiple sets. Gabriel's warriors moved with precision and discipline. These footsteps were frantic, desperate. Wrong. Two rogues burst into the corridor, their eyes wild and red-rimmed, foam flecking their lips. They were massive, scarred, and armed with weapons designed to kill quickly. When they saw Sarah they smiled. The Alpha King's whore, one sneered, his voice rough like gravel over bone. He was missing an eye, the socket a twisted mess of scar tissue. Should have stayed worthless. The other rogue, younger but no less feral, laughed. Theron sends his regards. Says the prophecy dies today. Sarah backed against the wall, her heart hammering. She could hear Gabriel's roar from somewhere in the fortress. Rage and terror combined, but he was too far away. These rogues would reach her first. The one-eyed rogue raised his blade, still grinning. Nothing personal, sweetheart. Just business. The warmth in Sarah's core pulsed frantically, her child reacting to her fear. Something fierce rose in her chest, not panic but fury. She'd survived 24 years of being called worthless, broken, a disappointment. She'd survived being sold like livestock. She'd survived learning her entire life was a lie. She would survive this too. Sarah felt fear coursing through her veins, but beneath it something else rose. Something ancient and powerful that had been sleeping her entire life. As the rogues lunged for her, blades raised and murder in their eyes, instinct took over. She didn't shift into wolf form. Instead, raw energy exploded from her core. A pulse of pure dominance and life force that erupted outward like a shockwave. The rogues flew backward, slamming into the walls with bone-cracking force. They collapsed to the floor, whimpering, their bodies convulsing as their wolves were forced into complete submission. Sarah stared at her hands. They were glowing with faint golden light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, with the flutter of life in her womb. What? The one-eyed rogue tried to crawl away, but his body wouldn't obey him. He whined like a kicked puppy, his face pressed to the floor, every instinct screaming at him to submit to the force that had just obliterated his will to fight. Heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor. Gabriel appeared, his armor splattered with blood, weapons drawn, his face twisted with battle-ready rage. He skidded to a stop when he saw the scene. The two rogues incapacitated and trembling on the floor, Sarah standing over them with her hands still glowing, power radiating from her like heat from a forge. His expression shifted from fury to something like awe. "Your Omega dominance," he breathed, lowering his weapons slowly. "It's manifesting already." Dr. Thorne hurried up behind Gabriel, his weathered face flushed from running. He took one look at Sarah and nodded eagerly, his eyes bright with scientific fascination. The child accelerates her transformation. She's accessing powers that typically take true Omegas years to develop. Remarkable. The golden light faded from Sarah's hands and suddenly her knees buckled. Gabriel caught her before she hit the ground, his arms gentle despite the violence still coating his skin. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. Then louder to his warriors who'd flooded the corridor, "Secure these two. I want them alive for questioning. And sweep every inch of this castle. If anyone else made it through, I want them found." Gabriel carried Sarah to the most fortified section of the castle. A wing built into the mountain itself with walls 3 feet thick and guards posted at every entrance. He settled her on a couch, his hands checking her for injuries even though she insisted she was fine. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. "I need to finish this." Hours later, as the sun began to set, Gabriel returned. His armor was cleaned, his expression cold and satisfied. "Theron Blackmaw is in chains," he told Sarah. "We caught him trying to flee through the northern pass." Sarah watched as they dragged the rogue Alpha into the great hall. Theron was massive, scarred, his eyes burning with hatred even in defeat. Gabriel's voice was ice. "You failed. She lives. Our heir lives. And you've just given me the justification I needed to deal with the council's puppets permanently." Theron spat blood. "This isn't over. The council will send others. You can't protect her forever." Gabriel smiled and it was terrible. "Watch me." After the battle, as Sarah sat in the fortified chamber with her hands still trembling from what she'd done, Gabriel and Dr. Thorne explained what had happened to her. True Omegas, they told her, possessed a unique form of dominance. Not the aggressive physical power that Alphas wielded like weapons, but something more fundamental. More primal. "You can compel submission through pure will," Dr. Thorne explained, his aged fingers tracing diagrams in an ancient text. "Heal fractured pack bonds. Sense deception as clearly as you smell fear. Project protective barriers that can withstand even alpha attacks. These powers are fueled by life energy itself, amplified exponentially during pregnancy when you're literally creating new life." Sarah looked down at her hands, still half expecting to see that golden glow. "I didn't know what I was doing. It just happened." "Instinct protected you and our child," Gabriel said, kneeling beside her chair. "But once you learn control, you won't need to fear for your safety. You'll be able to protect yourself and our heir better than any guard I could assign." Sarah met his eyes, and the determination that had kept her alive through years of abuse crystallized into something sharper. "Teach me. I won't be helpless again." Gabriel began her training immediately. They worked in a secure courtyard built into the mountainside, with Dr. Thorne monitoring her vital signs and the baby's heartbeat through equipment that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Sarah learned to call on her power deliberately, to reach for that well of energy in her core and shape it, direct it, control it instead of letting it control her. She was clumsy at first. The power came in bursts, too much or not enough, wild and unfocused. But Gabriel was a patient teacher, standing across from her and letting her practice on him, his own formidable dominance providing a safe target for her developing abilities. "Again," he encouraged when she managed only a faint flicker. "Feel the life in you. Your heartbeat. Our child's heartbeat. Let that rhythm guide the power." Sarah closed her eyes, focusing on the flutter in her core. The tiny presence that grew stronger each day. When she opened her eyes and released her power, it flowed smooth and controlled, washing over Gabriel like a wave. He took a step back, his wolf responding to her command with instinctive submission. "Better," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Your power feels different from mine. Where my dominance forces submission through strength, yours compels it through certainty. Like pack members obeying their alpha not from fear but from absolute trust in their leader's right to command." Sarah felt the truth of his words in her bones. This wasn't about making others fear her. It was about making them believe in her completely. And for the first time in her life she was beginning to believe in herself. 3 days after arriving at Castle Bravemoon, Sarah stood beside Gabriel on the castle ramparts as dawn broke over the mountains. Her hand rested on her stomach, where their child grew stronger with each passing hour. She could feel the baby's presence constantly now, a warm, perfect pulse of life that hummed in harmony with her own heartbeat. 3 days. That's all it had taken for her entire world to shatter and rebuild itself into something unrecognizable. She'd gone from rejected Omega to claimed mate to true Omega awakened. From worthless to powerful. From broken to whole. But she'd never been broken at all, she realized now. She'd never been infertile, never been defective or wrong. She'd been dormant, waiting for her true mate to unlock everything she was meant to be. Gabriel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his presence solid and reassuring. "The council will come," he said quietly, his eyes scanning the forest where scouts patrolled the perimeter. "Other alphas will test us. Rogues and mercenaries will try again. But we'll face them together. You, me, our child, and the packs loyal to the future we're building." Sarah looked out at the vast forests stretching to the horizon, at the wolves patrolling below in organized formations, at the kingdom she was now part of. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 days ago, afraid, powerless, resigned to a life of servitude. That girl had stood in a clearing in Crescent Falls and placed her hand in Gabriel's because she had no other choice. That girl was gone. In her place stood Sarah Bravemoon, true Omega, mate of the Alpha King and mother of the heir who would change everything. A woman who'd discovered she could flatten attackers with pure will, who commanded respect from centuries-old alphas, who carried within her the future of their entire species. "Let them come," Sarah said quietly, and her eyes flashed with golden light that reflected the rising sun. "I'm done running. I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid of my own power." Gabriel's smile was fierce with pride and something deeper. Love, she realized with a jolt. Real love, not just the mating bond but genuine respect and admiration. Then let's show them what a true Omega can do. The sun rose fully, casting golden light across the mountains and valleys below. In the forest, wolves howled in celebration and challenge, their voices carrying across the territories. Some howls were friendly, welcoming. Others were distant, threatening. The old world was ending. A new one was beginning, and it would be born in fire and blood. And Sarah Vance, broken, infertile, worthless Sarah who'd been sold for the price of her pack's survival, stood at the center of it all, finally understanding her true purpose. She was never meant to be small. She was meant to rise. And that's where we leave Sarah for now, standing on the ramparts, ready to face whatever comes next. But her story is far from over. The council is coming. War is brewing. And Sarah's powers are only beginning to awaken. If you want to see what happens when the true Omega finally unleashes her full strength, you need to watch the next video. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. The pack is just getting started, and Sarah Bravemoon is about to show the werewolf world what a true Omega can really do. I'll see you in the next one. Don't make me howl alone.